In the last video, we took our first look at expert mode and we talked about carriers and modulators and amplitude and timbre. So just to quickly recap, if I right click E to switch it on and click and drag here to route it into F, then E is our modulator and F is our carrier, and E is determining the timbre of the sound and F is determining the amplitude. Now obviously in terms of FM synthesis, this is as basic as it gets, with just one modulator, one carrier, both on the same frequency. But even though it potentially gets a lot more complicated than this, however complex it gets, it's still most helpful to think in terms of amplitude and timbre. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at the Easy Morph section. Now what we have on the Easy Morph section is a whole bunch of global parameters that affect the whole synth. What the Easy Morph page is for is allowing us to change our patches or patches that other people have made without having to go into expert mode and change a whole bunch of stuff there. So it's really handy, particularly if we want to change other people's sounds and we don't necessarily know kind of quite what they've put where or how they've done it all in expert mode. So yeah, it's a really handy page. So all the parameters sort of start off in neutral positions, and on the bottom left we've got an amplitude envelope and a timbre envelope. So if I raise the attack level on our amplitude envelope, we can give it a longer attack. And I can lower the sustain so it sustains at a lower level. I can lower the decay so that it doesn't take so long to get to that lower level. So it's a standard ADSR envelope, attack, decay, sustain, release. But we've got a timbre envelope as well. So we can do the same thing with timbre. And now that I've given it a slower attack, you can hear the modulation is kind of ramping up. Up here on the top left, we've got an LFO, so we can give it vibrato, which basically will modulate the pitch of it a bit. Like I said, they're all in neutral positions, so if I turn this down, it's not going to make any difference because there was no vibrato on the sound to begin with. There's tremolo, basically modulating the volume. And this timbre knob, which if we turn that up, will mean that the LFO will modulate the timbre of the sound. And of course, there's a rate knob. This harmonic knob will change the ratios of the operators we're using. The brightness knob will add more high frequency to the sound. There's a detune knob to detune your operators. And this velocity knob on the timbre section determines to what extent velocity on the keyboard affects the timbre of the sound. So essentially, the harder I play, the more extreme the frequency modulation. To the right of that, we've got this output section, which has a velocity knob for the amplitude. So the harder you play, the louder it is. The softer you play, the quieter it is. There's a stereo width knob which only really works if you're using multiple oscillators because it can pan them. With a more complex sound like the one I'm going to load in a minute, you would actually hear a widening of the stereo field with that knob. And of course there's a volume knob. Now down here we've got these two buttons, apply and reset. If I hit the reset button, it'll undo everything we've just done on the Easy Morph page. The sliders will go back to their neutral positions and everything will be like it was before. If I hit the apply button, the sliders will go back to their neutral positions, but it will apply the changes we've made in expert mode. So if I go ahead and hit that, now if we go over to expert mode, we'll see, for example, that our envelopes in operator E and F have taken on the settings that we gave them in the Easy Morph section. And we could go back to the Easy Morph section and say, actually, I don't want such a long attack. I want to have a very short, sharp attack. So we could bring the attack down on our timbre and amplitude. Doesn't change anything here until we hit apply. And now our envelopes have gone back to having a very sharp attack. So the Easy Morph section, really handy for customizing FM8 patches quickly and easily. For example, I could go to the browser and find a pad. I'll grab one from the FM7 Legacy sound bank, synth pad, and I'm going to grab this A and D pad. But it's got kind of a longer attack than I would like, so I can just change the attack on my timbre envelope and amplitude envelope. And it's got kind of a long release after I take my hands off the keyboard. I want it to be a generally bit more punchy sound, so I'm going to take these right down as well. And I'd like it to be a little bit brighter. Maybe a bit more detuned. And a bit wider, give it some more stereo width. If I don't like what I've done, I can just hit reset. If I do like it, if I'm satisfied, I just have to click apply, and those changes are written into expert mode. This effects section over here corresponds directly with our effects page. So the moment we've just got a delay on there, but if we go over here and give it a phaser and some reverb and some overdrive, you'll see it will have added those on the effects. Can't alter the parameters of the effects from this page. You can only add and remove effects. You have to go to the effects page for that. And we've got our amount knob, which is like a global dry-wet control for all the effects. To the right of that, we've got our morph pad, which can also be controlled on this top panel here. Now, the morph pad is really cool. What it allows us to do is have completely different settings on each of the 4 squares and then morph between them. We can even go to the browser and start dragging other patches to the squares on our morph pad. So now we've got 4 different pad sounds on each corner of our morph pad. And you can see the names of the patches I dragged in here. 80s pad, Android's choirs, 25 lovely nurses, and of course the A&D pad. As we move the little square on our morph pad, the sound changes as it morphs into these other settings. And if I go onto expert mode and use the little mini morph pad up here, you'll see that as I cross the boundaries into each square, we can see the different settings for our 4 pads that we've just dragged in. So that's basically what the morph pad does. There are some parameters which will be affected by the morph pad, and there are others that won't. I won't go into that now, because we're actually going to go back and look at the morph pad again in a lot more depth later on. So that's the Easy Morph section, and I would recommend that you start grabbing some presets from the library and having a play with them. Start changing the sounds using the controls here on the Easy Morph page and just kind of experiment. If you get any sounds you really like and you want to save them, remember to go File and Save As, not Save Sound, because you don't want to write over the presets that are already there because you might want to go back to them at some point. In the next video, we're going to return to expert mode and we're going to take a closer look at our operators, so don't go away.